Alright, this is the office area we're going to do now. As you can see, it's full of stuff. It's about 12 by 12 in size. But first thing to do is all this stuff has to be pulled out. We've taken pictures to document how it all looks, so we'll put it all back exactly the same. When the client comes to sit down again, there won't be anything different except a new floor under his feet. Well, this was the easy part, looking at it. Okay, well, the devil's all's in the details. This has taken about half hour to move all this other stuff here. Of course, it's very important that you have a place to put it all. If you don't have a place to put it all, you got issues. But in this case, there's plenty of space available. So now we have to deal with this, and this is where you get into extra time, etc. All that stuff has to be carefully removed, cataloged, etc., etc. Devil's in the details. Okay, more details. Here's our next project. Move that. That's actually 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces. We will unload each piece carefully, move the piece, and reload it for storage. More details. We got the whole closet. All we do there, of course, is remove the lower level, the lower layer of stuff. Again, just patience and time and care, but it adds up. Okay, here the space is now with everything removed, and actually the carpet has been removed. We're looking at the yellow foam pad. That's going to come off next, and at the same time we do other repairs that might need doing, such as finished painting behind where the bookcase was. And next thing that'll happen is the pad will come up, and then the base and the tack strip have to come off yet, so we'll show you that. Okay, here he's cleaning up the tack strip that's been torn off. There's a glue that they use that has to be removed. So you can see it here. This is what it looks like just after we first attached it. We use the oscillating tool to tear off the remover. This is what it looks like after it's been oscillated. So after this, we'll remove the base. That is the base that's not in the closet. We'll leave the base on in the closet. And just add a quarter inch to hide the expansion space. There you can see the base has been removed. Just start another piece here. He has to just get a bar behind it enough so he can lift it like that, and then he can pop the trim screws that hold it in. You got to pull them through. There's no way to get those out. And he numbers them so we know exactly where they go. And the operation does have potential side effects, mostly to do with sheetrock. Here you can see the corner. Broke the sheetrock along the metal corner bead. Lifts it a little bit. So touch-up is needed, touch-up paint is needed after that gets repaired with a hard, fast-setting mud. Doesn't always happen, but it's not all a surprise when it does. Once he gets them going, they pop pretty easy. Now when they go back on, they seldom go on as nice as they were when they came off. They'll be sitting higher, so the wall's a little different. There's stuff has happened to them over the many years they've been on the wall. So they've taken a set to where they've been living the last 30 plus years. And when you go to reset them, things will be just a little different. There will be damage on the back and paints and other stuff that affects it. Makes putting them back on a pretty slow process. But it looks like this when it's done. Here we're walking out to a finished section of the wall, and you can see how the base sits on top of the floor, just so nice and pretty. Of course, the base is hiding quite a wide gap there. The gap is needed for expansion, contraction, and movement on the floor. Here's a piece that has a quarter round on it. We chose not to remove the base here because of a mirror, a full height mirror, and in that removing the base is a fairly aggressive project. We don't want to hurt the glass. But again, here's a close-up of how nice the base looks. And we could. This was all removed. Here, you can see it. It goes back together. Now that fuzziness is not from the removal, that's just from 30 years of being a point in a hallway. Here's a section of base that has a base shoe on it instead of the quarter round. It's more handsome profile. Again, this was done for a specific reason. This is a transition piece. We had floor. Have floor going north-south there, and then in this room we felt it better to go east-west Excuse me. So we have to provide a joint of some sort, so we use a transition. And what we did in this case was use it's called a T transition, fastened it into the concrete, and then sealed our holes with plugs, wooden plugs. About our only option because everything is pre-finished. We have no other way to seal the holes. We're not going to just glue the thing in place because in a year it'll be loose. So we make a plug out of a scrap of pre-finished. You know, you're going to see that he's going to have to undercut the trim on this doorway, or the casing. You can see that the jamb itself has already been undercut. We did that getting ready for the floor in the hallway. And the reason we do this is so we can slide the floor under the finished millwork, and then it looks very nice. As it does here.
I gotta find some trim stuff and boards to cut on.
Yeah, there's one right there in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You might need some.
And there's a bunch of scrap in the cork pile. The other thing that we have to do is we have to look at the whole perimeter and make certain that anything like a corner where the corner bead extends all the way to the floor. We do that because in this case we're going to take the ends of our boards just slightly under the edge of the wall, since that gives us plenty of expansion space because the sheetrock is so thick. We have to make sure that we're clear. So we'll go around the perimeter and check all of our corners, make sure that that nothing's going to get in the way. Use this critter here for undercutting. You'll see he takes a piece of underlayment. He takes a piece of underlayment and then a piece of finished board, and that then will give us, along with the thickness of his blade, will give us a perfect fit. There he's got it. There's done, and moves to the next one. Now, that was easy, but like I say, the jamb has already been undercut. So the undercutting can be a fairly significant, fairly substantial operation. For instance, in this hallway, we had multiple doors, etc. that all had to be dealt with. It took quite a bit of time. Just another part of the process, so it looks perfect when it's done. Okay, so the floor now has been vacuumed. That's the last part of the floor removal, including the moving. It's about 5 hours to do this 12 by 12 area. Now, if one were to leave the base in place, that would it would certainly, go faster at this point, but it'd be about the same amount of time as it took the base to get off, and half as much again by the time a base shoe was added after the floor has been installed. Of course, the base shoe has to be color matched and then also fit, which takes time when done right. Now you see John and his assistant are starting the process of installing the new floor. And right now he's mapping the floor for dips and gaps, and I don't know if you can see it, but he's finding them already. It's pretty bad. That's real bad over there. So he'll do that on the entire floor, and he'll draw shapes around the defects in the floor. Sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low. You're kind of looking for an unknown common plane. After he does that, then we will float those areas so they meet that plane. There is one other way to deal with that, and that would be to pour a self-leveling concrete, Portland cement, I should say, product over the entire floor, and it will seek its own level. The whole floor will level itself out. Time consuming, expensive, highly, highly effective. It will give the floor an absolute solid underfooting, but not without its own problems and drawbacks. Going to a self-leveling the whole floor, again, it'll add substantially to the project final cost. It's a time and materials kind of thing too, because you don't know what you're going to run into, so it's impossible to really properly guesstimate how much it's going to cost. What we're doing by patching in or leveling the areas that we find deficient, we have pretty good success there. But there are some times and places where a foot will fall and you'll feel the floor give a little. Part of a floating floor on a floor like this without self-leveling it. And John continues to be closely supervised. Okay, so he'll, like I say, we'll complete this process, and then we'll show you what happens when we float the floor. Okay, here you can see he's what we call floating the floor. He's mapped it, and now he's troweling it to match the notes on his that he's drawn on the floor. This particular room is pretty bad shape. And you just continue to do that. Alright, well there it is. It's been floated. And that will set up in 2-3 hours. And one other thing we'll do after that's all set is we'll grind it with a stone to further level it and smooth it out and feather the edges back in. Gives one last adjustment. And we'll check for success and react accordingly. If all is well, then the cork goes down, and finally the flooring. That took this 12 by 12 took 6 hours, and if the room were bigger, it would be proportionally more time. If it had more doors, there'd be more time. But that's what it took to move everything, and with everything moving along pretty well. About 6 hours to do this space and ready it for the floor. Okay, floor is now ready for the cork. All the leveling patches have been ground down, mostly just on the edges to feather them into the existing floor. And half of that job is controlling the dust. We work very hard at making sure that the dust doesn't become a problem in the house as we grind each patch. We have a shop vac going at the same time to pull up any dust that might puff up into the air, and as soon as we're done with a smallish area, maybe 2 foot by 2 foot, then we vacuum that the surface itself. As we get done with each section, then we actually wash it with a sponge to pick up any dust that was missed by the vacuuming process. There's no sweeping done anymore at this point. Everything is vacuumed or washed because the powder is taken away so easily. Make sure all the windows are shut, the ventilation system shut down, everything, and the area is covered. Though with the vacuum going next to the grinder, and that's a hand grinder. It's not some big whirling power equipment, and the grinding is done quite carefully, so we're not stirring up a bunch of dust. After all that's done, then like I say, we wash the whole floor one more time. So now we're going to put down the cork, and then we can start planking it. Alright, now the cork is down. Not an insignificant part of the project, actually. It's expensive in that it's cork, and it does take time to rough it in like you see it now. If a lesser underlay is used, the cost of the project falls dramatically, but the end result probably isn't really worth it. At least not comparison wise. The cork is so quiet, and it also saves quite a bit of time in the installation, in that it's somewhat tougher, and we can lay it all at once instead of just enough to cover the area that we're about to put our planks down. Some of the underlay is extremely fragile. Extremely fragile. But in a building like this with the concrete floors, etc., in particular, the cork is very soft and very sound deadening.